Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer on the interactions of life. Today we're diving into exactly how organisms in an ecosystem depend on each other for their very survival. We tend to look out at a serene forest or a quiet local park and just see individual plants and animals peacefully going about their day. But if we're being completely honest, beneath that calm surface, hidden from plain view, there is an incredibly complex network of silent battles, fierce competition, and vital partnerships happening all around us. So we're going to unpack exactly how these relationships work, why they are so absolutely vital, and what happens when that delicate balance gets thrown off.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our game plan for today. We'll start with the delicate ecosystem balance, then move beyond predator and prey before getting into symbiosis. After that, we'll model a food web, predict some population changes, and finally, we'll tackle the ecosystem disruption challenge.
Kicking things off, we have Section 1, the delicate ecosystem balance. Let's look at the big picture of how living things actually coexist.
At the heart of everything we're exploring today is one massive, essential question. How do organisms, resources, and environments influence one another over time? Keeping this in the back of your mind is going to help you grasp the true interconnectedness of life. Because honestly, it's not just about who eats whom today. It's about how water, sunlight, shelter, and totally different species constantly push and pull on each other generation after generation. Every single living thing is shaped by its environment and, in turn, shapes the environment right back.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, beyond predator and prey.
So it is time to bust a really common myth right out of the gate. The myth is that ecosystem interactions are always just predator versus prey, or that animals in the same area who don't eat each other just kinda ignore each other. We naturally picture nature as this endless dramatic chase scene from a wildlife documentary, right? But the fact is, organisms interact in incredibly complex, interconnected webs that affect literally everyone. Even organisms that never directly cross paths can deeply impact one another's ability to survive.
A perfect example of this is competition. Beyond just eating each other, organisms experience fierce competition. This means even animals that never physically interact might still dictate each other's survival by competing for the exact same limited resources. Imagine two totally different species of birds living in the same dense forest. One species is an early bird, only active at the break of dawn, while the other is a night owl, only coming out at dusk. Because of this, they never see each other. Their paths physically never cross, yet they are locked in an invisible struggle. If they both rely on the exact same type of nutrient-rich berry for food, they're in intense competition. Every single time the dawn bird eats a berry, well, that is one less meal available for the dusk bird. If one population booms, the other might struggle simply because the food is gone before they even wake up. It's a silent daily battle for food, water, and space, where the combatants don't even need to look each other in the eye.
Which brings us to Section 3, understanding symbiosis. Symbiosis is just a fancy scientific word for the close, long-term interactions between different species.
And symbiosis comes in a few different flavors. The first one is mutualism. This is a relationship where both organisms involved actively benefit from the interaction. So in mutualism, it's a total win-win situation. Think about a bee and a flower. The bee gets sweet nectar to make food, and the flower gets its pollen spread around so it can reproduce. Neither one is being harmed. In fact, they both actively help each other survive. It's practically nature's ultimate partnership. Next up, we have commensalism. This one brilliantly illustrates a scenario where one organism gets a free ride or a free meal, while the other organism doesn't even notice or care. It's a win-neutral situation. A great example of this is a bird building a nest in a huge, sturdy oak tree. The bird gets a safe, elevated home to raise its chicks, completely protected from ground predators. The oak tree? Well, it isn't helped by the nest, but it definitely isn't harmed either. It just keeps on growing, totally unaffected by its tiny tenants.
And finally, we have the darker side of symbiosis, parasitism. This is your classic win-lose situation, where the parasite steals resources from its host, causing the host actual harm. The parasite benefits because it gets a free meal and a place to live, but it does so entirely at the expense of the other organism. Think of a tick attaching itself to a dog or a mosquito biting a human. The parasite thrives while the host loses energy, loses nutrients, and could even end up getting sick.
Okay, now that we know all the ways animals interact, through predation, competition, and symbiosis, let's look at a concrete case study. Section 4, modeling a food web.
Imagine a super simple, perfectly balanced ecosystem containing just 3 parts. First, we have a producer, like grass, which creates its own energy right from the sun. Second, we have a herbivore, let's say a rabbit, which eats the producer to survive. And third, we have a predator, like a wolf, which eats the herbivore. This is a very streamlined model of a food web. Energy flows from the sun, to the grass, to the rabbit, and finally to the wolf. And as long as these three groups remain stable, the ecosystem is in a really healthy, delicate balance.
But what happens to our perfectly balanced ecosystem if we just completely remove the predator? Let's break this down together in Section 5, Predicting Population Changes.
Let's walk through this as a worked example to see exactly how removing just one population messes with all the others. Think of this as a chain reaction. Step 1. The predator population, our wolves, is entirely removed from the ecosystem. Now, initially, if you're a rabbit, this seems like the best day ever, right? You'd think the rabbits have officially won. And sure enough, in Step 2, without predators to keep their numbers in check, the herbivore population absolutely explodes. They just multiply rapidly without any threat. But then we hit Step 3. Because there are now so many rabbits roaming around, they totally overconsume the resources. They eat the grass way faster than it can possibly grow back, completely depleting the producers. And that brings us to the tragic finale, Step 4. Without enough producers to provide energy at the absolute base of the food web, the environment can no longer support that massive rabbit population. They eventually starve and die off. So removing the predator didn't just harm the predator, it ultimately destroyed the producers and caused the herbivores to crash entirely. It just goes to show that every single organism, yes, even the scary predators, is absolutely essential to the health of the whole web.
We've seen how changing just one population size drastically affects everything else, so let's put your new knowledge to the test. Section 6, the Ecosystem Disruption Challenge. Let's completely flip the scenario from our last example for a final ecosystem disruption challenge. I want you to imagine a real or hypothetical ecosystem. Maybe it's the dense woods near your house, or a local pond just teeming with life. Now, if a disease suddenly wiped out all the producers, the plants, the algae, the grasses, what ripple effects would you predict across the interacting populations? How would the herbivores actually fare without their primary energy source? What's going to happen to the predators when the herbivores start disappearing? And how might that invisible competition for the few remaining resources change? I really want you to think deeply about this, trace that flow of energy and resources, because understanding these connections and predicting these ripple effects is the absolute key to mastering the interactions of life. Literally everything is profoundly connected, and a single change at the bottom of the food web will always echo all the way to the top. Thanks so much for exploring the delicate balance of ecosystems with me today, and keep questioning how the world around you connects.